Everyone now sees that the Republican primary system is totally rigged and broken. When two candidates who have no path to victory, they have no path, they're mathematically out. They ought to quit so we can all get together, we can all unify, and we can all go against crooked Hillary Clinton and beat her. Really, really beat her big league.
They don't. This worked. Josh Letterman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Repeatedly now, Donald Trump has said that this election will be rigged against him, challenging really the core foundation of our democratic system. Can you promise the American people that this election will be conducted in a fair way? And are you worried that comments like his could erode the public's faith in the outcome of the election? And if he does win, given that you've just declared him unfit, what will you say to the American people?
Well, at the end of the day, it's the American people's decision. I have one vote. I have the same vote you do. I have the same vote that all the voters who are eligible all across the country have. I've offered my opinion, but ultimately it's the American people's decision to make collectively. And if somebody wins the election and they are president, then my constitutional responsibility is to peacefully transfer power to that individual and do everything I can to help them succeed. It is, I don't even really know where to start on answering this question. Of course the elections will not be rigged. What does that mean? The federal government doesn't run the election process. States and cities and communities all across the country, they're the ones who set up the voting systems and the voting booths. And if Mr. Trump is suggesting that there is a conspiracy theory that is being propagated across the country, including in places like Texas, where typically it's not Democrats who are in charge of voting booths, that's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense, and I don't think anybody would take that seriously. Now, we do take seriously, as we always do, our responsibilities to
Hi everybody, this is Steve from TrustVote.tv. Today I'm reading An Electoral System in Crisis, a new paper by Lulu Friesdott and Anselmo Sampietro, written in collaboration with Fritz Scheuren and Election Justice USA. This is from July 18th, 2016. Having confidence in our elections is central to our faith in our government and all of the decisions that we make collectively as a nation. But are the candidates who win the ones we actually vote for? A large and growing body of research provides convincing evidence that U.S. electronic voting equipment in many areas throughout the country is not counting the votes accurately. This could be due to malfunctions in computer equipment that in 43 states is over a decade old and long past its natural life. However, in many cases, the evidence strongly suggests that fraud is the likely explanation. These problems have been occurring since at least 2004, and are certainly present in the current 2016 presidential primaries. The documentation consists of statistical graphs analyzing data from 5 presidential cycles, as well as off-year races from across the country. The data illustrates that there are unusually large discrepancies between small precinct and large precinct election returns, and noticeable differences between hand-counted and machine-counted precinct results. Even in isolation, the data give cause for concern. The statistical evidence is reinforced by physical evidence and congressional hearings, manual recounts that do not match the totals of the machines being audited, and testimony under oath about direct knowledge of tampering with electronic voting equipment. We examined the election results of the 2016 presidential primaries, and found irregularities in the overwhelming majority of the 21 states that we analyzed. The data indicates, in particular, that the totals reported in the Democratic race between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders may not be correct. In state after state, independent examination by two separate analysts found suspect statistical patterns giving Clinton inflated percentages that in all likelihood are not fully based on actual votes, and leaving Sanders with what appear to be artificially depressed totals. The difference between the reported totals and our best estimate of the actual vote totals varies considerably from state to state. However, these differences are significant, sometimes more than 10%, and could change the outcome of the 2016 Democratic presidential primary. We found irregularities in the 2016 Republican presidential primary as well, and while concerning, we do not believe that they are large enough to change the outcome of that race. Fritz Scheuren, a member of the statistics faculty at George Washington University and a former president of the American Statistical Association, has been a collaborator in this research. Examining the data from the study, Scheuren said, "As a statistician, I find the results of the 2016 primary voting unusual. In fact, I found the patterns unexpected and possibly even suspicious. There is a greater degree of smoothness in the outcomes than the roughness that is typical in raw, real data. It is important to note that the fact that a candidate benefits from irregularities does not imply that a candidate is responsible for them." In January 2014,
who agreed to appear, and we now turn to Dr. Felton for his testimony. He is a professor in the Department of Computer Science at Princeton University, which also happens to be Mr. Holt's district. He recently completed a study of an electronic voting system and will give us a report on his findings. And I also understand you have a demonstration for us, Dr. Felton. You may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And
could you turn on the microphone, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee for the opportunity to testify today.
Mr. Chairman, there's lights on that. Is there a way to...
Yes. I wonder if the...
No, much better.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. From a security standpoint, what distinguishes computerized voting systems from traditional systems is not that computers are easier to compromise, but that the consequences of compromise can be so much more severe. Tampering with an old-fashioned ballot box can affect a few hundred votes at most, but injecting a virus into a single computerized voting machine can potentially affect an entire election. 2 weeks ago, my colleagues Ari Feldman and Alex Halderman and I released a detailed security analysis of this machine, the Diebold AccuVote TS, which is used in Maryland, Georgia, and elsewhere. My written testimony summarizes the findings of our study. One main finding is that the machines are susceptible to computer viruses that spread from machine to machine and silently transfer votes from one candidate to another. Such a virus requires moderate computer programming skills to construct. Launching it requires access to a single voting machine for as little as 1 minute. I will now demonstrate this using a virus we constructed in our laboratory. We've set up here a simulated election for president between George Washington and Benedict Arnold. It's election day morning and we just opened the polls. No votes have been cast yet. I'll start by casting the first vote. When I checked in at the polling place at the front desk, the poll workers gave me this voter card, which I now insert into the machine. I press the start button, and I choose to cast my vote for George Washington. The machine asks me to confirm my choice, and I confirm my choice and cast my ballot. The second vote is similar. I insert another voter card. I choose George Washington again, and again I confirm and cast my ballot. The third voter inserts another voter card and votes again for George Washington. The correct vote count in this election, obviously, is George Washington 3, Benedict Arnold 0. Now it's the close of election day. A poll worker inserts a special supervisor card into the machine. Enters a PIN code, and tells the machine to end the election and tally the votes. The machine will now print out a paper tape summarizing the ballot count. When I cast my votes earlier, my choice of candidate was recorded in the machine's electronic memory. This record of my vote was invisible to me. I had no way of verifying whether it was recorded correctly or whether it was changed after it was recorded. In this machine, the records were modified by our virus. This paper tape, printed out by the machine, reports the election's result. And it shows George Washington with 1 vote and Benedict Arnold with 2. Every record in the machine and outside the machine is consistent with this fraudulent result. Our technical report, referenced in my written testimony, goes into considerable detail about this problem and explains why existing election procedures are not sufficient to prevent it. One lesson is that security depends on getting the technical details right. Too often, the designers of this machine failed to get the details right. A good example is the access door here on the side of the machine. It protects the removable memory card that stores the votes, so the door should be locked securely, and access to the keys should be strictly limited. But in fact, tens of thousands of AccuVote machines can all be opened with the very same key. And this very same key is used widely in office furniture, jukeboxes, and even hotel minibar keys, and even hotel minibars. It's easily purchased on the internet. This one I bought online from a jukebox supply shop, and it does open the machine. The implications of our study go beyond just this machine and reveal broader systemic problems. More worrisome than any specific vulnerability is that this system, despite its many problems, was certified, purchased, and deployed by many states and counties, and has been used in important elections. We can do more to improve the security of our e-voting. I detail many recommendations in my study and written testimony, but one important safeguard is a voter-verified paper audit trail. A well-designed paper trail can improve security and enhance voter confidence without compromising accessibility. Certainly, paper records have their drawbacks, but they have different failure modes than electronic records do. And the combination of electronic and paper records together can be more robust against fraud than either one would be alone. Getting the details of voting right is difficult, especially in today's high-tech polling place. But failure is not an option. The stakes are too high, and the risk of malfunction or fraud too great to make our current course tenable in the long run. Election experts, accessibility experts, and computer security experts all have a role to play in improving our voting system. If we work together, we can solve this problem and give the American people the voting system they deserve. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Our second witness is Gary Smith. Mr. Smith is the election director in Forsyth County, Georgia. Georgia uses a paperless DRE system statewide. And for those who don't know what DRE stands for, it's Direct Recording Electronic Computer. Basically, it's the type of computer we have displayed here. Mr. Smith uses a debolt system that was the subject of the Princeton studies. Mr. Smith also participated in the recount of the Cuyahoga County primary that was conducted on a DRE system with a paper audit trail. Mr. Smith, you are recognized.
Well, as he's mentioned, my name's Gary Smith. I reside in Forsyth County, Georgia.
Is your microphone on?
Is that better?
Yes. We have an overflow room and people that are very anxious to hear you.
All right. Well, my name is Gary Smith, as you mentioned, and I am the election director for Forsyth County, Georgia. It's a county just north of Atlanta. It's quite a fast-growing county. We have about 80,000 registered voters, and we are one of the top fastest-growing counties in the United States. So we have a lot of issues that we have to deal with all the time. One of the things I think that's important maybe is to look at what those of us as election directors, how we come about. I'm actually appointed through a selection committee that comes about where a grand jury is brought forth. They pick a panel of people who have the background to be able to do this. It's then sent up to the Chief Superior Court judge, and then I am selected from that. I was selected from that process. I'm in my second term as the Director of Elections. It's a term of 4 years, and it is a nonpartisan position. Prior to coming into this position, I spent most of my time working in the private sector. I retired. I was running various companies, and I have worked most of my life in industrial automation. So I have a technical background. I have an undergraduate degree in electrical engineering, and I'm also a certified election and registration administrator from a program that's administered by Auburn University. As the director of elections, one of the things that I've been privileged to do is to be able to sit on a task force, several of them. One has been from the Georgia Task Force, which allows me to be able to participate and look at new processes and equipment that we apply to elections in our county and our state. In addition to that, I served on a national task force for election reform for 2004, where we looked at all of the processes across the country with regards to elections. In addition, I think you just mentioned, is I did lead the manual recount for the Cuyahoga County VPAT, so I have some practical experience with that, and I was happy to be able to do that. I did it spent a week at it, as a matter of fact. We have implemented the DREs, the one that you're looking at right here, which is the debolt TS unit. In fact, my county and 158 counties in Georgia implemented this during the general election of 2002. We have held, from what I heard was the last count, something like 2,500 elections in our state. In addition to that, I have held elections on special elections, primaries, general elections, runoffs, and just about any kind of election, and a municipal election as well. So again, we have a lot of experience with them. One of the things that
strategies, their vote counting strategies, and you know, we'd like to see it all happen, and we'd like to see your help. And just before that, because we're going to have a question and answer period, I wanted to have Bob present. So.
All right. Good welcome. My name's Bob Trakis, and it's really an honor and privilege to be at PDA, and I know everyone tells you that when they start out, but in 2005, when I was a well-known conspiracy theorist with my co-conspirator Harvey Wasserman, there was virtually no organization in America that would let me speak. And then Mimi Kennedy called me and said there was actually a group of Democrats, even though the election campaign had officially folded, is that they were interested in hearing about the fact that private, partisan, for-profit corporations secretly count our votes with proprietary software. PDA immediately understood that this was a problem. And I'm always amazed at what all, I think it's sort of the ability to see the obvious and the practical in politics that brings PDA together. I've never been able to figure out the rest of them, how, and I speak here as an international election observer. I had the privilege in 1994 of going into El Salvador after the revolution and negotiating with the death squads as well as the right-wing fascists. And the two groups could only agree on one thing. That is a large transparent ballot box, and that everything was on paper and it was opened up before the world, before the UN observers, before the international observers, before the media, before the people, and that's how the vote was counted. Now imagine if I was there and it came in and go, look, friends of the fascist arena party have arranged for some people connected with the military and the security apparatus to secretly count the votes on computers, and you can't look at the software because it's proprietary. My report, which I co-wrote and edited and gave to the UN, would have been simple. Presumption of theft and fraud. And I'm charging the Clinton campaign or whoever worked on their behalf of having done the same thing. What happened in the United States against the Sanders campaign is the most, it can't really be considered an election, particularly in New York, in Alabama, in Arizona, in California. It was a coup d'etat. And what they told us, right, we now know it's like the nation attacked Harvey and I as being conspiracy theorists in that scenario. What was happening? The DNC was conspiring? Yes! We know that from the emails. They were conspiring. Not only to out him in West Virginia, Bernie Sanders is a Jew and an atheist, but to use the entourages, to use the regulars in the party, those that are in the movement to curry favor and move forward in their own careers instead of standing on principle like the PDA. So, again, how many of you have seen the revelations in the email and elsewhere that the Clinton Foundation received donations from two of the major voting machine private companies in the U.S.? Absolutely. I don't know how this is allowed under law, that somebody who's a candidate or who knows they're going to be a candidate accepts money from Hart Intercivic and Dominion. Any more than I understand in 2012, when my newspaper, the Free Press, freepress.org, revealed that, again, Mitt Romney's friends at Banco, through Hig Capital, and Solomir, his family's personal hedge fund, had invested and purchased Hart Intercivic, the third largest voting company in the United States. They probably got a good deal on it because there were 12 areas of security of which Hart Intercivic failed all 12. They had no isolation technique. The contamination of a single precinct would rewrite and erase the logs through the entire system. So why does Mitt Romney buy the worst voting machine company with his friends in America. Could it be because it was coming down to Ohio in many ways, as often it does, and that was the company that was counting Hamilton County, Cincinnati, Ohio? I don't know, I'm just suggesting, I think what many of you understand, the obvious, that more than anything, we've got to stop these private, proprietary, for-profit, partisan companies from counting our vote.
Yeah.
To this end, I have filed suit against Edison Research, the polling monopoly group that is either the most incompetent pollers on planet Earth or working in collaboration with the media pool and the secretaries of states in certain states to come up with the oddest adjustments imaginable to make the vote count flip. Now, most of you, I know, are aware that in the 26 primaries, that for the most part they got every primary right on the Republican side. So they're very competent when it comes to Republicans. But on the Democratic side, you had 12 states. If they weren't states in the United States, but foreign nation states, they would be under investigation by the United Nations as conducted a fraudulent election. And every one of those states, Bernie Sanders either won or did significantly better in the original exit polls than his final count was allotted. And some of them are so far off, like Arizona. How do you come up 36 points off the exit poll unless somebody has cheated and committed election fraud on a grand scale? And to be fair, I have a degree in political science. I am trained. I'm willing to consider the null hypothesis. That is, that the universal laws of statistics are not applicable when Bernie Sanders runs against Hillary Clinton in 12 key states. We ought to consider it and then immediately dismiss it. Is that if you look at what happened here, my book is called Strip and Flip, and it goes over the whole history. I mean, some stuff that is interesting, right? BSSNR, Bureau of Social Science Research, founded by the CIA for propaganda in the overthrow of Iran. Most of the voting machines came out of that core group of people. That group of people are the ones that decided we should be using, ultimately, in the long run, in the 60s and 70s, supercomputers to tabulate votes. So it's really a handful of people. And I know what you're thinking. Dr. Fitrakis, many of them are on the record for only believing in tampering and stealing votes in the third world. I'm sure, because that's where this technology comes out of, right? And they openly admit to it. They openly admit. Some of you may know of this, but when Frank Church, the senator for Idaho, bless him, stood up courageously, the CIA admitted that they had engaged in 5,000 benign operations. Now, benign operations is an interesting term. It's a term, it's not a bloody coup. We didn't have to kill 800,000 ethnic Chinese in Indonesia in 1965. It's a term that means rigging elections. And when this emerges in the US, it's really associated, shockingly, with the former CIA director, George Herbert Walker Bush. That's when these faith-based voting machines, these push and pray machines, where you can't verify them, first come out. 1988 in New Hampshire. John Sununu rolls them into Manchester. We got these new, and again, they were Shoot-tronics. You won't see that name anymore. And to be fair to Ransom Shute, he was only arrested twice in Philadelphia for election tampering. So they changed the name of the machines to Danaher. So in that scenario, here's the Washington Post reporting. Bob Dole is up 8% in the last tracking poll. By a miracle, Bush wins by 9 percentage points. An unexplained 17-point shift the first time they use these push and pray machines that can't be audited. So Washington Post goes with what they know. It was an unforeseen grassroots upsurge. No proof of it. No one saw it. No one reported it at the polls. And the other thing that they've been doing systematically is stripping the voter rolls. I think the greatest level of perfection in vote stripping occurred in this election because what they're using now is meta and megadata as well as geospatial with all of that social economic statistics, including age, and it doesn't take much. Shockingly, in Ohio, Bowling Green, where there's a college, Athens, Ohio, tens of thousands of people had to vote provisionally or showed up and weren't on the rolls. And then you go, well, yeah, some for Hillary, some on the other side, but it's always Brooklyn, a home base in New York for Sanders, or Ohio University in Athens County. It's always a hardcore Bernie area that is targeted. Think about this. Private for-profit companies control, we privatize this. They're helping with the databases. And then they work on the electronic poll books. And again, Seidel, which comes from Barcelona, the Free University, a foreign company that bought up a mysterious SOE in Tampa, Florida. All of these companies, they're one-stop shop. Not only will they register your voters and build your electronic poll books, they'll also handle your social media to make sure everyone has a good experience, and they'll do your central tabulation, your election night reporting, and prepare your final results. And increasingly, if you look at the provenance of these companies, like Seidel, like SOE, Seidel, you found they have interlocking directorships with companies like the Carlyle Group, with Booz Allen Hamilton, with a nonprofit tied to the CIA. A lot of this technology was pushed by the security industrial complex. So let me leave, by agreeing with Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter told Der Spiegel, United States has a non-functioning democracy. Also, those of you who listen to the same Progressive, which is a great podcast, again, the statement that was read there when she went to Carter's grandson and said, well, why aren't you doing something about U.S. elections? And they said, we can't monitor U.S. elections because they don't meet the minimal standard of democracy. And what we've seen here today is the greatest jacking and theft of votes in the history and sheer numbers in the history of this country. And I'm agreeing, but let me say, I believe Bernie Sanders, if you look at the exit polls, the raw data, should be, in fact, the nominee of the Democratic Party. You know what you're good at, man. You know, that's a skill I've been arrested many times. I'm getting a little old for it, but I'm willing to take a Mason. But everything, raise your voices, work on this as policy, write letters, create projects where we go into the polls and we're not afraid of taking those arrests. We're not afraid of
about ALEC, Alec. Who's funding all this shit?
The Koch brothers, sure, and they have model legislation that basically makes it very easy to strip people from the voting rolls. And I think you do the mass stripping because it's easier to flip a small percentage of votes than to do the obvious.
I just want to know this. This election, knowing what's happened, is there anything, I am so frustrated because I want to know if there's anything that can be done with all the suits that have already been filed this time around that are sitting there going through the system to help us in this election coming up. I don't want to hear it's too late, but if you tell me that, at least reality may start to set in. So that's what I want to know. Is there anything we can do right now with this upcoming election?
Well, we have a suit right now with Padilla asking for a contest for the whole thing to be re-looked at and not certified. That would only be the state of California. That's not the United States. Well, it's going to take weeks at a minimum. Months is reality, I think, in the real world. We'd be lucky to get it done before the election. In the best of circumstances, and California wouldn't swing it. The horror of what happened. The horror is really what AP did the night before the election, right? I mean, it's all up here. You know, when they steal our minds, when they steal our ability to fight back, when they steal our ability to seize the thunder away from Hillary, that was what California was about. It wasn't about the votes, it was about credibility to govern. And that fight remains today. And it will continue right up to the election and after the election, okay? I mean, what we need to create is nothing less than a social crisis. And that's why my heart is with you. Because that's what needs to happen. We cannot accept whatever happens this week as the be-all and end-all of anything. If we're building a movement, the idea is to take power.
Right there. Okay, excellent. So you were more specific about your lawsuit. I'd like everybody to be more specific about your lawsuit, exactly what you're going to prove. And also, if anybody talked to Bernie, why didn't he do anything? It's ridiculous. I'm so angry with him. And then the third thing is, what can we do to protect Jill Stein's election? Because we're only a couple months out.
But oh no, I'm just moderating.
All of them, everybody.
Yeah, my said Edison signed, so I don't have to call out the marshals to serve them. So the Edison Research Group, and I'm already getting the emails that, oh, you should drop that suit, you're in big trouble. They're going to nail you with so many fees, and they're going to have sanctions against you, and they're going to fine you. And it's like, let them. Then I'll get a goddamn hearing for once. I'll get to introduce that stuff into evidence. Yeah, go ahead and sanction me. I'm looking forward to it. And we've got many experts. Now, I'm expecting to get a response from them in 21 days. My thought is that, you know, a lot of times people get dumped from the ballot. Who knows what new revelations will come out? As long as those ballots aren't printed, you can, print a new ballot and put Bernie Sanders' name. I'm going to do everything I can to expedite my suit, but there's other political forces in the world, and a lot of it will depend on the luck of the draw of the judge, but I'm not going to be quiet. I'm willing to go anywhere in this country, just as I came to California and predicted with others, including Mimi Kennedy and Greg Palast and Harvey Rossman and Beth Harris, exactly what was going to happen. Of course, I knew Michael Vu and wrote about him extensively. I knew when San Diego, as the registrar, hired one of the foremost high-tech cheaters in America, that his life was going to come into play in some way that would negatively impact democracy. So, again, I'm waiting for the answer.
What would it prove?
What would it prove? I'm hoping to prove that Bernie Sanders did, in fact, win. And I'm with the social crisis theory here, right? If they can throw out elections and redo them in Austria, if they can jump machines elsewhere, if we have clear and convincing evidence, then we ought to follow the laws of the United States and the states where the laws were violated and delay the election in order to have justice and true democracy and enforce the Constitution. Sometimes you have to wait in a crisis and do it right.
So what we're doing is Bob and I are working on that particular lawsuit, and we will need donations when we get our response to help us with the media. We'll need support from alternative media because the regular media is being sued. Not directly, but the media consortium hired Edison, and that includes AP, all right? And so we will need help because it's an educational process to let everybody know that Big Brother is in control and we've got to do something different. And if we do get enough support, we will look and see where the ballots are and may perhaps even start a RICO case to be able to look at the ballots. And Bernie will have a chance to look at this and contemplate it, or whatever he's going to do with it.
Is he going to mark the black pipe?
What?
The black pipe is when it works.
So that's what we can do about that. And I agree that it was a real coup, like Bob Petreka said. But with all of you, we can use your help and support because it's an enormous task.
Right there.
And last one. No.
Direct your question.
I just kind of wanted to respond. This lady asked what we can do. My name is Emily. I helped with the election observing in California with Bill's lawsuit. And so everybody in this room needs to go and volunteer to be election observers. If that is something that it's very